It's been a year since Unity almost burned down the house with the announcement of their new fee structure, charging developers every single time a player installed their game. Fast forward 12 months with a whole heap of changes, including a new CEO. Have Unity corrected their course enough to make developers stick around, or should they be looking at greener pastures? Ooh, something new over there. So let's break down the issues Unity were facing and what it actually means for developers. On the 12th of September 2023, Unity put out a blog post titled Unity Plan Pricing and Packaging Updates, in which they announced a new fee structure. And one of the key takeaways from this proposed change was the introduction of a monthly runtime fee, which would charge developers every time a player downloaded their game. Obviously, this led to outcry in the industry, as developers would suddenly be paying a considerable fee that they previously weren't. And for games that make a small amount per user, such as some free-to-play mobile games funded by ads, their revenue could have been decimated by this new charge. Their proposed fee was 20 cents per download. So for a game with 1 million new players, this could have led studios paying Unity an extra $200,000 on top of their existing license costs. Now, Unity did state that, like its licensing tiers, there are minimum requirements, which meant the game had to reach $200,000 in revenue and 200,000 downloads first. But they also stated that the policy was not only applicable to new games, but also some eligible games that were already on the market, with very little details about what that actually meant. Overall, this led to a wave of developers making statements, calling Unity out on this controversial change, and some promising to never return to the engine again, instead seeking out alternatives like Unreal or Godot. And speaking of Godot, this was the perfect time for the little open source engine to shine. Godot is funded completely by a development fund, where individuals and companies pledge money to Godot to ensure the development can run smoothly without any financial worries. And thanks to Unity's mishaps, Godot's development fund saw a massive spike in numbers, as their member count shot up from around 400 to 1,500 members, and their monthly funds doubled from €25,000 to 50,000. They even saw big name developers such as Relogic and Robot Gentleman contributing massive amounts to a project that they truly believed in. Godot has been growing within the industry as the alternative to Unity for a while now, and with every new version, like the latest 4.3 release, it's getting more tempting to developers to take this new path. As an open source, crowd-funded project, Godot didn't actually take any fees whatsoever for their licensing. So for smaller studios that don't have a lot of revenue to begin with, it's really nice to have one less thing to worry about. But back to Unity. Once this initial chaos had started, Unity was scrambling to find a way to fix the fact that they had just shot themselves in the foot. Their first response was a blog post that claimed most of their customers won't be affected, which was immediately seen as just a way to spin the conversation. Unity has a lot of users, and there is a very heavy bias towards hobbyists that don't make any money at all. Only a small percentage of the user base will actually have a steady amount of revenue, so of course this only affects 10% of their customers. They clarified that fraudulent installs or reinstalls won't count towards the runtime fee, and trials, web-based games, or charity-related installs are exempt from the charges. The issue with this is, they didn't say how they were going to be tracking these kinds of things, and no one outside of Unity would be able to verify this data at all, so this didn't really help anyone's cause. After yet another statement where they acknowledged that they had handled things quite poorly, they were yet again facing backlash. Within a month, they had rewritten their plans multiple times, and then finally, John Riccitiello resigned as CEO. Most of the changes were scrapped, and Unity had to work to build back any trust they had previously shattered. So what is the current status of Unity and their runtime fee? The runtime fee is still here, but it will only apply to games developed in Unity 6 LTS or later, which hasn't been released yet, so it won't come into play until that happens. One of the most important details for this system is that it does not affect Unity Personal or Plus licenses at all, and in fact, the Unity Personal license got even better with their new system. So for some developers, the outcome of the controversy is actually quite nice. How each tier of their licensing works is that once you reach certain milestones in regards to revenue and install base, you have to upgrade to the next level of license. For Unity Personal, the original income limit was $100,000, but going forward will be $200,000. So as long as you are making less than $200,000 annually and you are using one of the new versions of Unity, you do not have to pay for any fee or license for the engine. This is where the vast majority of indie and hobbyists will fall, so the change has actually affected them positively. Once you are making above this mark, you will need Unity Pro. This is where the runtime fee will come in. Unity also offers plans for Enterprise, which is for those operating outside of the games and entertainment industries, such as automotive or aerospace fields, but as I'm interested in game development, I won't focus on that aspect. With the Pro license, once you have surpassed $1 million of revenue in the past 12 months and hit 1 million unique installs, you are then eligible for the runtime fees. The runtime fees are calculated per month, and you can see from this table here how they break down. So for the first 100,000 unique initial engagements per month, you are charged 15 cents an install. Then, for subsequent brackets, this value gets lower and lower. At the bottom there, you can see Group B, which is only 1 cent per install, and this is from any country outside of the ones listed. So no matter how many installs you get outside this market, you'll only be paying 1 cent per user. And most importantly, Unity have limited the amount that you can be charged in this system, as you can either choose the total of this runtime fee or 2.5% of your gross revenue, whichever is lower, meaning that if you have a smaller install base but you have a high rate of income per player, it would be beneficial to take the runtime fee. Whereas if you had a larger install base but lower revenue, it could be beneficial to take the revenue share option. So for smaller developers, Unity now costs less, but as you go higher and higher, the costs rise. But are the updates to the engine enough to warrant this potential price increase? Unity 6's key features focus on performance and optimization, two things that are quite important when building a large-scale game, with new options for GPU-based rendering techniques, new lighting features, and build profiles. The new GPU resident drawer, for example, is a way to batch render game objects, which reduces the amount of draw calls overall, freeing up processing power for other things. One tool that is really nice to see is the inclusion of the new multiplayer services, making it easier for out-of-the-box multiplayer development, which means that the devs can focus more on creating fun new game mechanics instead of devoting time to coding networking solutions. And while yes, there are alternatives already on the market that offer these kinds of pre-made systems, it's good to have the option in the engine ready to go. As Unity 6 is still in preview, it's hard to know whether features like this will be game-changing, but from the surface, it seems like Unity are trying to push the boundaries for HDRP-driven, ultra-fidelity games to match what Unreal Engine are doing with their visuals, but we'll just have to wait and see. One small change as well is that you can now remove the Unity splash screen at the start of your game, and I think they've done this for a very specific reason. When you see Made with Unity at the start of a game, you know that that is a Unity personal user, which means the game is likely to be low budget. So in your head, subconsciously, you will equate Unity to low budget games, which is obviously not what Unity would want. When you play a top seller that's made in Unity, you won't see that splash screen. So you might not consider that Unity is capable of powering these great games, further adding to the image issue. Removing the splash screen outright removes any potential for this to happen. Maybe they didn't do this at all and instead just did it because people asked for it, who knows, but I'm sure someone at some point had to consider this. But what do you think about this whole fiasco? Did it make you leave Unity for something else, or did you stick around because you didn't want to waste your experience? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.